And good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Loyalty Summit's Loyalty Leader Insights series. Today, we are going to be talking about Loyalty Buzz, what airlines are doing in loyalty today. And I'm joined by two fantastic guests. It's going to be a really fun discussion today. We have Brian Summers from Skift, and we have Mark Ross Smith from Travel Data Daily, who most of you should be familiar with these two gentlemen. And we're going to pick their brains about what is going on in the industry right now. It's not a normal year. We don't have to tell anybody about that. It's not normal times. But there is a ton of things that programs are doing right now. There's probably even a bigger ton of things that programs should be doing, and they're not. So maybe we might be able to dig into that a little bit. I want to kick off with kind of the state of where we are. Brian, I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a moment here.
Sure.
And, you know, we always have to caution about talking about the US versus the rest of the world. But, you know, obviously, there's always all eyes on the US when it comes to the aviation market. Recovery. Are we in it? Are we not in it? Is this a dead cat bounce? What's happening here?
Well, I never realized how unique the United States was until all this happened. People around me think that a recovery has happened, and about 70% of the airlines are talking about on calls that a recovery has happened, but the data doesn't really show it. So you probably hear about people talk about, oh, the TSA numbers are up. Well, they're up, but they're up off of nothing. And you've got a few airlines, American and Southwest, the top two of them, that for whatever reason are they're trying to stimulate travel any way they can. And then you have two other airlines, Delta and United, that say, wait, there is no recovery here. People don't want to fly on our airplanes. If they do, they want to social distance, and we're not going to put the capacity back out there. So there are a lot of people in this country that are in denial, and there are a lot of airlines in this country that are in denial. And if you break it down further, you guys have data on customers. I mean, there's a lot of people that say privately that if you were to overlay the people that are flying against people who like the President of the United States or watch a certain news channel, you might see some similarities. So that's kind of what I think about the recovery. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that on a webinar, because we all want, in the industry, right? We want this happy talk. I just don't see it.
So, just before I switch to you, Mark, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you call it the TSA numbers, and just before we connected this morning, I quickly looked at them, and I don't religiously look at them every day, because, to be honest, I think it's like, it's like watching paint dry to some degree, but it's also, it's like, oh, did something move slightly? I liken it to be the patient in the hospital who's, on life support, and there's a pulse. There's definitely a pulse. There's no doubt about that. But they're still not doing well. I mean, as you say, I mean, we're talking record numbers. I mean, from Memorial Day, I think over the last 2 weeks, we've had a steady stream. Every day has been an increase in nominal numbers passing through TSA checkpoints. But it's still 85% down year over year. So as you say, I mean, it's an increase, but if you just woke up from a coma that you'd been in, you had no idea what was going on in the world the last 2 months, and you looked at these numbers today, you'd think today was the end of the world. Those numbers are that bad. Mark, looking at it more internationally, you're based in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of other nuances to whether a recovery can actually happen with airlines. What are you seeing over there?
Firstly, Brian, thank you for stealing my talking points to this question. I've got to come up with new stuff now. Look, I was looking at the CH Aviation graph just earlier, and it says that 54% of fleets are grounded worldwide still. And I think if you were to drill down into that data a little bit more, you would see that definitely in Southeast Asia, there's much higher than 54% of fleets that are grounded. For example, I'm in Malaysia, and the borders are closed here. There's really not domestic travel at all. I would say probably 100% or 99 point something percent of fleets are grounded right now. There is no demand. People aren't booking tickets. And compounding that problem is you've got a bunch of airlines, not just with him in Malaysia, but locally, there's a lot of uncertainty around the airline's financial future. And so people are a bit scared in some ways to to put their cash out there and book tickets, because they're seeing what's happening in North America to do with refunds, and they're a bit scared. They would rather hold on to that cash, support their families, do what they need to do now, rather than look to book that aspirational holiday in Tokyo Disneyland later in the year or anything like that. So there is no such thing as a recovery here. Yeah, I think airlines are, just going through the motions of, trying to secure government capital. We saw today Cathay Pacific with that big announcement of the Hong Kong government stepping in. So I think especially in Southeast Asia, we're seeing that play out right now. I think once that's happened, people have more confidence in booking the airlines. Some of the borders start to open up again. I think then we'll start to see some of the recovery sort of come back.
I think that's a good point. When we think about, sorry, Brian.
No, I just wanted to chime in briefly about the TSA numbers because I've had some time to think about it. Rarely in this business do we talk about passenger traffic as in it's so great there are a lot of people traveling. We don't talk about load factor. Like the TSA isn't giving us yield numbers. I presume if they did, they would be like the worst yield numbers you would ever see on that many travelers. So that's why I just can't take that much stock into that TSA data.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's so multifaceted. I mean, it is fascinating, when you want to drill down to the level of detail. But as you say, at a headline, top level view, is the recovery happening? It's like, let's just temper our excitement. And I think in the US as well, there's been a little extra momentum to the excitement. The airline stocks took off in the last week, primarily based on, those rising numbers. And I don't give investment advice. There's plenty of people that do. But, it seems to me that, either the airline stocks were over depressed during April and May, and or they are, there's been a premature, excitement about where things are going. But when I think about other geographies around the world, I mean, we've got the UK that's just instituted their 14-day quarantine business going on there. We've got Australia that, still there's no international travel. New Zealand, there's no international travel. Australia's only just lifting the interstate restriction. And for those that aren't aware, with Australia, a number of Australian states, you literally could not travel across the border between states. You needed to get a police clearance to be able to do so, and they weren't granting those in too many cases. So I'm not sure that I agree with both of you that I think it's a bit premature. I think it's fair to say that there is some pent-up travel demand, and this leads to an interesting other point. Mark, you mentioned sort of people being a bit I want to switch to that, because as loyalty managers, when you're managing a program, your role is, to a large degree, to stimulate demand, to try to get your loyalty membership to buy more tickets or book more hotel rooms. Or if you're a coffee shop, buy more coffees. I mean, that is your role as a loyalty manager. So when we think about the current environment, we want to stimulate demand amongst our loyalty membership to get back in the air. And it's interesting because I think about three aspects there. I think about promotions, I think about pricing, I think about future flexible travel policies. So we have all the airlines out there saying, hey, book with us now, book that trip right now, like you said, Mark, but, no risk to you, because if you change your mind later, it's going to be flexible. You can cancel it or you can change your date without fee, blah, blah, blah. But Brian, have airlines shot themselves in the foot by screwing customers over with regard to withholding refunds in the last couple of months? Our memory's long enough amongst customers that they would be like, no, you screwed me over last month. I'm not giving you more cash today.
Yeah, I don't think the airlines think that the customer has a very long memory. We've seen this before with other things, right? If you're going to be $10 cheaper on the next time, people are going to forget. We have seen finally most U.S. airlines come around with regard to refunds. Maybe they did it out of altruism. More likely they did it because the federal government kept reminding them that they had to do it. And look, it takes a lot in this country to get the Trump administration to enforce any regulation, but the Department of Transportation was getting a lot of complaints. So you may have seen United Airlines this week, and they were a big holdout. They didn't want money out the door for any reason. They finally said, okay, we're going to give refunds. Now, we all know from airlines all over the world that there is a big jump between saying we're going to give refunds and that money getting back into the travelers' pockets. Airlines can delay, they could not answer the phones, they could do all types of things, but at least the rhetoric is getting better, and maybe people will understand that they can get refunds. Look, I'm probably like you guys, if people ask me, should I buy a plane ticket? I say, well, why would you give a no interest loan to an airline? When you're ready to fly, there's probably going to be a lot of empty seats. You're going to get you're going to get a deal. You know, people are stuck in the old days. If I don't buy my plane ticket 3 months in advance, it's 2019. It's like the greatest moment for airlines ever, and I'm going to end up paying $800, and I paid $300 last year, and I'm going to die. But I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that anymore. So it's going to take a while for people to realize the new economy of plane tickets, but I think they'll get there.
Now, Brian, while we've got you and while you've got the microphone, flipping that around, where airlines have issued, whether because they were withholding refunds or just because travelers elected to, decide the point, airlines have issued gazillion dollars worth of travel credits, future travel credits. And I know you published an article this week, Alaska Airlines, the investment conference the other day, mentioned, I think the figure was close to $600 million worth of travel credits they have outstanding right now. How do you see that playing out in terms of, travelers booking future travel?
Well, it's interesting, Mark, you were on the inside of this. At least, whether it's true or not, at least to journalists, airlines are always like, we have models, we know exactly how this is going to work, don't worry about it. And they're like, we don't have a model for giving $600 million of refunds or credits in a 3-month time. We have no idea how people are going to use it.
You lost your audio there, Brian.
I'm sorry. Am I back or I'm not back?
Mark, are you still there?
Yeah, can hear everyone.
All right. Maybe you should go to Mark.
No, we got you back. You're good. You're good.
Oh, you've got me back. I'm sorry about that. Still working on this home studio here. So yeah, Alaska said, we think a lot of people are going to try to use these credits during the summer, but we don't know. They could use it all at once, and that's going to be a big drag
again there, Brian. So we might flip to Mark, and I'll give you a second. Maybe it might be your headphones running out of power there or something. But I think if I understood correctly, there we go, you're back again. But I think you were saying in terms of, we've got $600 million with Alaska Airlines outstanding credits, and a number of other airlines are going to have even higher figures of outstanding travel credits. When they are when passengers are going to redeem those, it's not necessarily a revenue problem on the books for the airline, because they still get to book that revenue. I mean, when somebody buys a ticket today for travel, in 2 months' time, that revenue doesn't get recognized until the travel happens. So it's not a revenue problem when it comes to earnings calls, but it is a cash flow problem. And Mark, I mean, that's really the issue we've been having across the board, isn't it? Is the cash crunch.
Yep, agreed. Look, I'll put my loyalty hat on for a sec, and because when you're running loyalty in airline, your job is really to be a customer advocate. It's not to be an advocate for the CFO, right? Let's make that clear. So putting my customer hat on, I couldn't care if the airline can't afford it. I couldn't care if the airline doesn't have a process for it. It's not my problem. I paid the airline money.
Yep.
I paid for a seat. That's what I wanted. I'm not getting my service. Now the airline doesn't want to refund me, or however the airline is handling it. And if the airline, it's up to the airline to figure out how to make that work. They're all getting cheap cash or cheap access to resources or discounts or favorable terms from suppliers. They're getting a lot of support across the board, and I'm sure they can get support on how to figure out how to use their credits. So from a customer perspective, I just want a good deal, and if I book something, I want you to fly. Otherwise, why would I fly with you? Because right now I want reassurance that you're going to be there for me, because I'm a loyal member. I've got my gold status. I've been doing the right thing all these years by the airline. I've been shelling out tens of thousands of dollars to keep my status, doing status runs, booking you when I could have booked a much cheaper competitor. I've been doing the right thing. Now it's time to realize that loyalty is that two-way street, and it's time for you as in the airline, to give something back to me. And that something is reassurance and comfort that you're going to do the right thing.
I think, 100%, Mark. And this ties it all together for me. When I think about this, I think, we've got a problem. The industry has a problem, and there is a commercial imperative that they need demand stimuli. They need people to get back on planes. In order to do that, people need to feel comfortable. People need to be able to fly. So if you're a corporate traveler, you need your travel restrictions lifted. If you can't fly because there's government restrictions in place and you can't fly, well, then that's stopping everybody. But in time, those will resolve. But it's not just about that, because we know managed corporate travelers aren't traveling. We know there's no group travel right now. There's no group meeting and convention travel happening. As we talked about 2 months ago, the travel is going to likely be led by a small number of unmanaged business travelers, who aren't afraid to get back on the plane, or they have to fly. There's no choice about it because they need to travel. Some leisure travelers and visiting friends and relatives. And there's a pent-up travel demand. People have cabin fever. People, we see that. People don't want to abide by the lockdowns, in the US. That's, it's an issue, personal liberty and all the rest of it, apparently. But the reality is, and we saw this after SARS, a huge pent-up travel demand, in the recovery that happened after SARS eventually. So there's no reason to doubt that exists this time around, and that's going to exist this time around. Whether it's V-shaped or not is a totally separate question. But part of this links to, and again, putting loyalty hats on, how do we get our members to feel comfortable getting back on planes? Part of it's pricing, part of it's being allowed to travel, part of it's feeling comfortable and reassured travel. And we're getting a lot of messages coming out from airlines, and I think I'm getting one from almost every airline in the world that I'm a member of, telling me, Dave, it's safe to travel. Don't worry, we've got a heap of filters and all the rest of it, and we'll give you some hand sanitizer when you get on board. And it's interesting because we have Tim Clark from Emirates, we have Alan Joyce from Qantas, we have Scott Kirby from United, all getting out there and saying, Michael O'Leary getting out there. Everyone is getting out there saying, the big names here are saying there is no social distancing on planes. Now, depending on who's saying it, they mean sort of different things. Some of them are saying it's impossible to do it and we need every seat sold, and we don't want to raise capacity. Others are saying, look, regardless of whether we try to do it or not, you're never going to achieve that 6 feet of distance between people. Alan Joyce is referencing Australian government regulations that have these weird formulas for every type of business of how many people per square feet of space you have in your establishment, and he's explained that's not going to work on planes. I think we can all agree some of those things are ridiculous. But in the US, Brian, we have a couple of airlines taking very different stances. We have United and American saying, you know what? Best efforts, but there's not going to be any social distancing, really. And the planes are full. We're seeing those viral photos on Twitter. We have Delta coming out and going, JetBlue and Southwest coming out and going, we're going to block middle seats, at least for the next couple of, through to September 30 for Delta, for the next time period for the others. We're going to continue to do that. Is that simply smart marketing because they know they're not filling them now anyway? They know people need reassurance. And really, there's people who are already traveling who don't need the reassurance. But then there's the people who aren't booking. And as a loyalty manager, they're the people you really need to go after. Is Delta being smart and tapping into that same mindset, in your opinion there, Brian?
First of all, I have to ask you, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
I think it was my hearing aid wasn't working.
What a great argument for the fact that we all have to do this in person again. But now to answer your question, look, Delta from a marketing angle has been the smartest U.S. airline for 8 or 9 years now, since right after the merger with Northwest. They know what they're doing. I think you're right. Nobody at Delta thinks that this is a science-based approach. They get a revenue premium already over their competitors. They want to keep it. They probably want to grow it. This is a brand that's using this opportunity as a chance to sort of improve its standing. And it knows people want that middle seat. It makes them feel good. It does mean that Delta's only selling 60% of economy class seats. It's really amazing what they're doing, especially as travel demand comes back a little bit. But great for them. It's nice to see. You mentioned Southwest a little bit. You talk to them sometimes. Like I don't know if it's a secret or whatnot. They've always run at lower load factors than some of the other airlines, and they have lower costs. And I just don't think that they care that much. Their business is not predicated on 93% load factors. It is predicated on higher load factors than every middle seat filled. But they're going to do the best they can.
Mark, middle seats, loyalty perspective. When you go outside of the US, premium airlines outside of the US, very typically either as a published benefit or, well, I'll rephrase, either as a well-known unofficial benefit or, they do it as a surprise and delight, often try their best to block middle seats next to premium travelers, high status members of their program. With some airlines, it's so predictable. If you are a high status member, you're going to have the middle seat blocked unless it's full. US airlines just don't do it. They don't do it. And then when they do it, they might do it up until the gate opens, and then they fill it with non-rev travelers. And so those middle seats are never blocked anyway. And that's in the best of times. Is there an elite status play here that loyalty managers can be looking to do? It's like, hey, Mark, you know what? You're a top tier traveler on my airline. I'm going to prioritize the middle seat being blocked next to you unless I absolutely have to fill it. Or as a published benefit to get elite members back on the plane right now. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. What do you think?
My gut feeling of talking to a lot of travelers and program managers and people that work at airlines in general is that, especially in this part of the world, if you're flying right now, you're not flying for status. You're flying for another reason. And that other reason is driving your travel spend. Within that group, you'll have a bunch of people that want social distancing, that want that spare seat next to them, want the spare seat in front of them. But by and large, if you're flying right now, especially in this part of the world, is because you have to. Yeah. You're trying to get back home. You should have done it sooner, but you're trying to get back home to wherever that is, or you're seeing a family member for an important reason, or you're doing something of importance. You're not just jumping on a plane and go to London for lunch and coming back again. You're doing it for a reason, and therefore the middle seat if it's available or not is just a fact of life that you're just putting up with it. From a loyalty member benefit perspective, I highly doubt that's driving any sort of incremental bookings for airlines right now. In fact, we'd seen a lot of airline lounges closed right now. So if anything, I would see that as probably a bigger factor. If you're an elite member, maybe you've got no lounge access right now, and that's a published benefit, whereas middle seat's not a published benefit. So that's perhaps more of a detractor from a loyalty benefit perspective than a middle seat.
No, I think you're right. I think in all the travelers that I talk to on a daily basis, I'm and the feedback we hear from airlines, and I know, Mark, you're having these same conversations. There's people traveling right now, and there's people not traveling right now. And the people traveling right now are just like, I don't care about social distancing. I don't care about middle seats. Now, whether it's because of their voting intention, Brian, or just because they're regular travelers and they know the drill, they're used to having to rub shoulders with somebody in a middle seat. It's just the way of life if you're on an airplane, 3 days a week, and that's your life. The issue isn't them. The issue is the people who aren't flying. And at least anecdotally, I am hearing from a constant stream of people that just are like, I'm not being on a plane right now. And every time I see one of those viral pictures, people are just like, there's no way I'm traveling right now. So I think the problem is real. I think there is a mindset out there. We've had months and months around the world where governments are telling people and health experts are telling people, keep as much distance as you can from other people, preferably 6 feet or 2 meters, depending on what part of the world you're in. But basically every inch counts. And then we have airlines coming out and trying to say, doesn't matter, it's not important, it's perfectly safe without that. There's a disconnect there. And I don't think that that's helping airlines drive ticket purchases. Let's think about where loyalty can play. Let's pivot loyalty a little bit here to promotions. Mark, it's a staple of loyalty programs is you can run promotions to stimulate demand from your loyalty members because you have a membership base of people that are interested in accruing your currency or utilizing your benefits, or they have affinity to your brand, or simply the fact that they've flown you before and you have their data and you have permission to market to them. It could be as simple as that. We're seeing a little lackluster promotions, right now. American came out of the gate with like a 500 bonus miles. It's almost like why do I bother even looking at the email? There's I think a double mile offer right now, but it's capped at an incredibly low level. It's pretty lackluster. We're seeing some other sort of dipping toes in the water from other airlines around the world. Is it simply just too early to really bother with promotions, and now's the time to maybe just kind of test and learn a little to see if they're going to work? Or are we really is there a lack of creativity out there amongst programs?
I think both, David. I mentioned recently on another webcast that loyalty programs a bunch of them are just laying down and playing dead right now. They're doing nothing at all. They're just sort of waiting for the government money to come in and save the day. That's a bunch of programs out there, a bunch of airlines, I should say, in general. And then there's the other group that I'll split into two further groups. And this is kind of separating, the men from the boys, if I can use that term, in terms, we're really seeing who's switched on and who's not. Like you talked about the AA 500 miles they did, I think it was a month and a half, 2 months ago or so. And then the double miles came out last week, I believe.
I think so.
I agree. Double miles is just not going to cut it at all. In fact, it's probably going to cost them money to run that promotion because they're shelling out double the miles to people that are going to fly anyway. So it's probably an actual cost as opposed to driving incremental revenue, which is what loyalty is supposed to do. Look, I think they need to get creative. They need to stop thinking like an airline and start thinking like a digital tech company, and that's exactly what loyalty programs are. It's actually, the loyalty program is the tech part of the whole organization, and they have what I call a flying metal tubes division. They have this airline that supports their program. The airline is the most interesting part right now. If you look at American Airlines is such a great example. The loyalty program valued somewhere between $18 and $30 billion, and the entire market cap of American right now is about 9 or 10 billion. The loyalty program is double the whole company is right now. So the head of loyalty or the VP of loyalty, that division, you could argue they're more important than the airline CEO right now.
7.66 billion as of right now, Mark. So
there you go.
7.67. No, back to 7.66. There we go. Yeah.
So maybe I throw this challenge out to everyone listening. What I'd be doing right now is getting super creative. Start thinking like a tech company. Promote your head of loyalty to be the chief loyalty officer. Put loyalty on the board of the airline, and then it'll get the attention it needs, because it's the only part of the airline that can make money right now. It's the only airline, the only part of the whole structure that has the ability to make high margin revenue right now, even when the fleet is grounded. So why not support that division in their effort to support the airline?
I don't disagree at all, Mark. I'm obviously, I think one of the things that has always stood out to me as odd, especially in this era of, billions of dollars of, billings revenue that come through, airline loyalty divisions, and not just in the US, is the fact that often the head of the loyalty program is actually a relatively junior in the organizational structure. And yet, Brian, you listen to earnings calls all the time, and I won't name the airlines here, but, in the US, we have certain CEOs that refer to the loyalty program as the card program, because, Mark used an example with American Airlines. Not just the valuation is 3 times what the airline is worth as a whole, but responsible for more than 50% of profit. Well, right now, it's probably significantly higher than that in the current circumstances. And yet, not only they're not on the board, they're not in the C-suite. In fact, often they're not even at an SVP level, which is just, to me, is very odd. And that's not the same at all airlines around the world. But if we look at all global airlines, we see there's a whole spectrum of where they sit in the organizational structure. But Peter just put a question there, and just for the people that haven't realized, we have questions available. There are opportunities to ask questions. We'll get to those certainly over the second half of the webcast. But one of the questions he says is, please discuss business versus leisure, and his hypothesis: business travel will take longer to recover. And I think we've talked about this over a number of weeks. Brian, I know you've talked about this. Mark, at other forums as well, you've talked about this. This is hot topic, and there seems to be, whilst it's certainly up for discussion, but listening to the most recent round of discussions at investment conferences from airline execs, they seem to be backing this hypothesis as well. We've got unmanaged business travel, some that's back or coming back. We have visiting friends or relatives, and we have summer leisure demand in the Northern Hemisphere. That is, in the US, Doug Parker said himself, Florida. It's all about Florida. We'll sell, what did he say? We'll sell $50 tickets or $20 tickets to go to Florida if that's going to fill planes. I'm paraphrasing. That's all great. But what about the managed corporates, the ones that buy the high price, high fare, high yield business class travel? What about those famous Apple execs that are buying 50 business class seats on United between San Francisco and Shanghai every day? Obviously, that's the bread and butter business. Brian, your thoughts on, is that hypothesis right? That managed corporate travel is just, it's not there yet. It's going to be a little way away. And if loyalty can be working to fill that gap in the meantime, it needs to be prioritizing that. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm a professional journalist. I was trained as a professional journalist. And oftentimes when you see conventional wisdom popping up in the industry that you cover, you're supposed to question it and go against it. And as you mentioned, the conventional wisdom is that business travelers are not coming back, and they will not come back that quickly. I get the feeling that this is that rare case where the conventional wisdom is probably true. Everyone in the U.S. airline industry is saying it. They've been saying it at these investment conferences. There isn't a whole lot of business travel in the heat of the summer normally, but these companies are saying there is very little managed business travel coming back. They are hopeful that it happens in September once the summer is over, but they don't know. And then the other piece of conventional wisdom, which is also probably true, is that when it comes back, it's going to come back domestically in short haul and not long haul, and probably in economy class and not premium class. Look, businesses, they like certainty. They like to know what's coming. You not only have this virus, but you also have this fear of a recession, and businesses are going to be slow to put their people back on airplanes. And then you also talk about, pent up demand. There are a lot of companies out there that manage travel pretty closely. And it's one thing, I have cabin fever, and it's one thing for me to say to my wife, as I did last night, French Polynesia is opening up. Can we do it? And it's like our call, and we might get the virus. We might not. We might not, and we're not going to go anyways. But it becomes our decision. The CEO of my company is Rafat Ali, a wonderful man. But we're kind of in this position now where, maybe I want to go to London for the weekend because it would be fun. Again, I'm not going to do it, but I could. But if he tells me to go to London, for the week for a conference, then all of a sudden I say, how dare my company send me on something that could be dangerous? Mm-hmm. So I just think there's a different tolerance for the danger of COVID when it's your own call versus your manager's call.
I think it goes the other way as well, doesn't it, Brian? Because, what I'm hearing from a lot of travelers is even if they're thinking to themselves their own personal risk tolerance, they're saying, well, I could be prepared to go out and, visit a client site or something like that. Their employer is saying, well, no, we're not letting you travel because we have duty of care obligation.
So that's right.
And you know what? Guess what? The client doesn't want you coming face to face because they have duty of care obligations to the people in their office. They don't want outside vendors coming in. So I think it goes both ways. I just want to take a very quick break. Thank our sponsors before I forget. For those that want more information on the Loyalty Summit, and particularly our upcoming in-person conferences, once it's safe to hold them, we have some news coming out about those very soon. So please stay tuned to loyaltysummit.com for those. We are excited to be able to get back and meet in person. Not yet. But hopefully not too far away. I want to thank Engaged People, Amia, Adara, Hilton Honors, who are our official venue partner for Loyalty Summit in the Americas, Radisson Rewards, who's our official venue partner for Loyalty Summit in London as well. So I want to thank them for their support of Loyalty Summit. Don't forget, we have Q&A available as well. We'll get to those. Pivoting hotels for a second, Mark. Hyatt yesterday, I think, came out with an interesting promo, and Very quickly, for those who aren't aware, it's basically a two-headed promo. It's basically triple points starting from your second stay. Kind of sounds like a normal promo you'd run in the normal times. Interesting. Second promos commencing from a second stay is really common in hotels now because, hey, they don't want to waste money on people who are only kind of one and done type stayers. But then there was a second component for elite members. There was a bonus on your very first stay. I thought that was interesting for two reasons. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. Is Hyatt being clever right now and basically saying, you know what, look, there's a lot of inelastic travel that's happening. We're just not going to bonus that one and done type stayer. But, for those that are traveling, we might not stimulate extra demand, but we might be able to steal you away from staying at Hilton or Marriott and come and stay at Hyatt instead. And for the elite bonus, is that just acknowledging that, hey, elite members have a higher propensity to travel? Let's bonus you, try to get you back into the hotels. Are they missing a trick with not just having a generous offer out there for everybody right now, given that the bulk of the membership are not elite?
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. The way I look at these promotions is the simplest answer is often the answer, and in terms of how the team arrived to come up with that promotion. So the logic is probably we want to reward our elite members more than our non-elite members, therefore we just give them some recognition on their first night. Simple as that. I guess, a sophisticated program should know which of their travelers are driven by points, which are driven by status, which are driven by conferences. They might just be traveling business conferences. Who's driven by wanting staycations. They've got all these little segments, right? Mm-hmm. And, a good program's got maybe 500 different segments, right? And people can belong to multiple segments and they change at any given time. So every good practice is every week you would update these segments based on the data you're collecting from those people in the past week. Obviously, there's not much data to collect in the past week, so we've got to keep that in mind. Look, for the people, so what Hyatt's trying to do is move the needle a bit, get more stays, help the hotels, right? So I guess what they're looking at is they're going to offer points, 3 times points. They're obviously aiming this at people that are motivated to earn points, right? So they're looking at that particular segment. The question then becomes, how many points do you need to get them to go stay there so they get over any fear they might have of getting the virus, right? Or any sort of other, in the US, you got things like protests and stuff to consider as well, right? So maybe I flip this question to Brian. Think about it this way. How many points or miles would you need to want to take, if Rafat said you're going to London next week, how many miles would you need to be earning to feel okay and comfortable with that trip? Like, is it 3 times, 4 times, 10 times? Is it like an extra year of executive platinum or 1K? Like, what is it? What is that? Where is that point where you're like, I'm down for it, let's do it? Oh, can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think there's any number of miles or points that would get me back on an airplane right now. And I was the #1 guy in the ecosystem last year as far as earning points and miles. I finally made 1K for the first time in my life. And it was a huge, huge deal for me. And looking back, that was highly irrational. And right now, there's nothing that's going to get me back on an airplane.
No, I think that's an important call, and I want to pivot on that a second. I know I referenced Tim Clark earlier, but in the interview with Tim Clark, who's coming up for retirement, just for those that have forgotten. So he's never been afraid to kind of give his opinion. But his view of the world is managed corporate travel and group travel isn't going to come back. It isn't going to come back properly until there's a vaccine. And we know that that's likely to be some time away. So we are probably going to have a prolonged depressed environment. And Brian, I know on the earnings calls, the airline CEOs and everything are saying that, they're still expecting even 2021 to be significantly down on 2019 travel. So, this is going to be a very long tail recovery. But, thinking about well, maybe promotions in the typical sense that hotels and airlines might have thought about a year ago, it's just not going to cut the mustard now, because the reasons for people not traveling, aren't going to be solved by just some extra miles or some extra status or some extra benefits. And Mark, you hinted lounges are closed right now. If you are a regular traveler with elite status, and the bulk of people don't have elite status, but if you are a member with elite status, and whether you are traveling now or you're hesitant to travel, lounges are closed, in-flight service is cut back. The reality is that traveling isn't fun now. For a lot of people, I don't think travel was fun at any point in time, but things like elite status and premium cabins helped remove a lot of the friction from that. It's a very small percentage of the people that just fly just because they're flying junkies. It's not necessarily the most fun experience out there right now. I want to pivot for a second. Brian, in the US, we've seen some musical chairs being shuffled around at airlines in recent days. America and United have both announced, under the guise essentially of staff cuts. Americans said they want to cut management by 30%, management support staff. We've seen the head of the Advantage program announce her departure. New replacement coming in. We've seen the head of the Mileage Plus program take on extra responsibilities. But at America, one of the interesting things is under the new management reshuffle, the loyalty program and revenue management are both going to report up to the same executive now. I want to kind of pose this question to both of you, but I'll start with Brian. As loyalty nerds, we're big fans of revenue management, loyalty working together. The reality is whether they report up to the same executive or not, there's a natural tension that exists. Loyalty wants to have a lot of reward seats out there, for customers, for members to use. Revenue management wants to squeeze every dollar available for every seat before it goes out the door. But at the same time, they don't want seats going out empty. So if loyalty can help fill them, there's a benefit there. But those two people don't always talk to each other and don't always have a good working relationship. I think it appears American either deliberately or coincidentally is looking to solve that. Your thoughts on that restructure and your restructures generally that are going right now?
All right. So you guys are the experts on this, Mark. You are on the inside of it. But I'll give my thoughts. You talked earlier a little bit derisively, I should say, about U.S. Airlines calling it the card program. But at the end of the day, somebody like me, I've gotten very interested in the card game, sometimes even more over putting my butt in the seat on the airline because it's easier. And one frustrating thing for me over the years, and I've been complaining about this, is saying, look, your programs are kind of set up for the old paradigm where like I fly and you give me a mile and you just kind of gave me that mile. And so you don't really attach any revenue to it. You don't think of me as anything more than a loyal traveler. But there are a few airlines out there where it's like, I've never flown you. I read Joe DiNardi at Stifel, and I know how much the airline paid for that mile. Ergo, I bought the ticket. So sometimes I feel like they need to realize, the revenue department, that somebody needs to figure out the calculation that this ticket has been paid for, because I've just transferred over, 100,000 miles at somewhere between 1.5 and 2 US cents, and the card company has immediately paid the airline. So maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but I'm hopeful that this kind of reorganization will help airlines kind of better understand the economics of their own programs. And then you asked more generally about reorganizations. For some reason, and I don't quite understand why, but a few US airlines have created this magic number, 30%. We think demand is going to be down 30% for the near future. Therefore, we need to cut 30% of staff. I imagine that is just an estimate, but they all say that they're going to be smaller. And look, I mean, there's some very good people that are going to leave airlines, but I do think that there was a very long period where U.S. airlines were making more profits than they ever had. And like any company, some of them got a little bit bloated. And like you look at Scott Kirby, who's the new CEO of United, I'm sure I'm guessing he doesn't really mind using this opportunity to reorganize his staff and get his people in there. He I don't know if you want to use the D word, but he essentially demoted his COO and put him in charge of special projects. This is an opportunity for some of these airlines to do a reorganization that they always should have done. American was way too bloated after the merger with US Airways. They never did the reorganization that they said they were going to do. So maybe they're going to be leaner and meaner after this.
Mark, you've done a lot of work, in terms of, your relationship between revenue management and loyalty. I know we talk about it all the time. It's a hot topic, in terms of optimizing, how best to optimize the program. And, I don't want to, spend 3 hours getting into the weeds here, but at a high level, your thoughts on that?
I get cut straight to the chase here. Right now, it's critical that loyalty and revenue management, network planning, strategy, all these people work together. And I'm not talking like an hour a week meeting. I'm talking 2-3 hours a day working together, because this team combined, especially revenue management and loyalty, I call them the super duo, because when they get together, they're kind of like the Avengers. They're all powerful and they can solve amazing things. These groups of people, they're the people that are going to try and predict demand. These are the people that are going to have to fill seats. They're going to have to figure out where planes are going to start flying to, what sort of schedule they're going to be on. And loyalty plays a pretty critical role in that. If you think of most airlines, where on any given flight, you've got anywhere between 20 and 40% of passengers have loyalty, a loyalty card, from anywhere from the base level right up to the top status. That's a lot of people on a flight that have some interest in the loyalty program. So when airlines are ramping up ramping up their schedule, their network, and trying to predict where the demand's going to be coming from next, you could argue that loyalty is going to be responsible for anywhere, 30+% of that revenue. And that's why I feel it's critical right now to be working together as a team. A lot of airlines say that, we don't work in silos and, we're cohesive and we work together. They don't. It's basically a lie. Now's the time to do that, guys. Now's the time to actually say, all right, let's bring all the network planning, the loyalty, let's bring everyone together on a daily basis and see where we're at. Let's update the models. Let's try and predict where the demand's going to come from, how loyalty can play a part of that. And loyalty's been playing sort of a 30% piece of that, right? Mm-hmm. Hence my comment that loyalty is critical to the airline right now, and it should be a C-level role.
Yeah, I absolutely. Hey, I want to get some quick thoughts on a couple of other topics, and I want to come back to data to kind of finish off the discussion with. Mark, your neck of the woods, Singapore. I saw you post something on there a few days ago. Some inefficiencies are coming through the system there.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to today was the LinkedIn. I screenshot an email I received from Chris Flyer, and they said, "Congratulations, on renewing your gold status." I have 0 Singapore Airlines flights last year. They renewed it because they're renewing status right now. And the email says you'll receive your new membership card and your bag tags in the next 4 to 5 months. So I guess there's some card and fulfillment issues there. Maybe that's their slight way of saying demand's not going to pick up for 4 to 5 months, so don't worry about your card yet. I don't know.
But I mean, Mark, can I ask a question? I'm sorry to interject here. I may never be invited on one of these things again. But it's 2020. You ran a loyalty program. Why are they still sending us bag tags? Do people really get excited about these things?
You'd be really surprised. It works like this, Brian. Not 20 minutes ago, you were sharing with us how excited you were to hit 1K status, right? You're going to get that 1K tag. You're going to put it on your bag. You're going to waltz around the airport and, hey, look at me, I'm 1K. You're proud of it. It's a badge of honor for you. You've earned it.
All right, can I just tell a quick story here? I got my luggage tags last year from 1K, and I gave one to my daughter. She's 3 years old, and we put it on her backpack, and we walked through the airport with it. And my daughter asked my wife, "Why do I have this bag tag?" And my wife said, "This is the tag that you put on your bags so everybody knows how much time Daddy left you last year."
Which means regardless of COVID-19 or not, Brian, you were going to be grounded this year regardless because the wife has spoken. But it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point because one of the things, I mean, all jokes aside about the ego side of status, which should be dismissed, but traditionally, bag tags with some airlines were also meant to signal to staff, baggage handlers, other staff, etc., that those bags were priority. Now it doesn't always work. I know with some airlines, I won't name them, but their regular flyers actually, some of them that are on the plane 3 days a week don't use the tags because they think baggage handlers actually deliberately throw their bags at the back, just because they want to snub their nose at them. But the reality is there's meant to be some utility attached, but it's also the branding. It's an opportunity so that especially if that passenger, that frequent flyer happens to fly another airline that day or that week, and they've got a tag on there, it's some subliminal advertising. So I think there is some aspect to that. But bag tags aside, membership cards, I think, is perhaps a more legitimate question there, Brian, in terms of moving towards digital fulfillment. But in the Singapore Airlines case there, Mark, seems to me that it would have been better to just delete that paragraph and not mention anything rather than antagonize members by saying, congratulations, by the way, now you have to wait 4 to 5 months. Also, your neck of the woods, Mark, Thai Airways. Talk to me about Thai Airways.
Last week they suspended the Star Alliance redemptions for members. So if you had Thai Airways Royal Orchid Plus miles, you can't redeem them for anything except for Thai flights. Bit of a downer. I don't know what that is, that message they're sending to the market here. I don't know if there's some quirky rule within Star Alliance where if an airline enters sort of bankruptcy protection, then it stops certain agreements, or maybe there's other airlines that are concerned they may not get paid from Thai because of the situation they're in. Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure there's something going there, but as a loyalty advocate, it's not cool for members. Mm-hmm. And if you've got miles sitting in that program right now, I'm not the best situation.
Brian, think about data. Obviously we could talk to Mark about data all day long till we're blue in the face, and it would still be a fun and interesting discussion. But from your perspective, where you sit, and everything that comes across your desk, Brian, any anecdotes you have of where you think airlines are doing a good job right now in terms of data, or are you, like a lot of us, constantly disappointed even in this time of crisis where there seems to be a complete ignorance and lack of using the data that they have?
Yeah, I haven't been overly impressed at the way airlines have used data. I mean, you see it all the time. United is supposed to be better than other airlines, and I think they are. But you log into the website or into the app, and you're constantly seeing kind of an offer that isn't germane to you. The one that I've been bringing up as an example for a long time is, in the United States, we can be members of the airport club, so we can use it whether we're elite status members or not. And so I'm a member, but every time I buy a ticket, they're reminding me that I should buy the day pass. I've always found that ridiculous. And there's tons of examples about that on every airline.
Mark, you're a loyalty program manager today. In the current situation, the CFO comes down to you, or the CEO comes down to you every week, basically saying, either in person or as it comes down the organizational chart in some airlines, but you get the memo every Monday morning saying your job is to stimulate demand, get your members back on planes. What's your data play right now?
Data, I think Brian said it right. If you haven't got a good data strategy, and if you're not using data properly right now, there's a roadmap to get that happening, and that's not a 2-week project. It's months. And So if the CFO is walking down, sorry, the CEO, because if I'm running it, I'm the chief loyalty officer and I don't report to the CFO. So I'm on the board. I'm in a board meeting, and they say, Mark, how can we generate more revenue? I say, well, what I would look at is, firstly, loyalty is one of the only areas of the airline that can generate new revenue right now, even when planes are not flying, right? The obvious one is go to your co-brand partners, go to your bank partners, do some deal with them. Don't just do bank transfer like a bonus, like 20%, 30, 50%. Don't do that. Go crazy on it. Go to town on it. See how much you can move the needle. That's what first thing. Second thing is you've got this other thing called elite status, and there's a million ways to monetize this. For example, the people that didn't qualify for status last year, they've dropped in status by now. They're not flying, but now's an opportunity to offer them something. They'll pay for it. They'll buy that status back. You know, that's high margin revenue. It's almost free money for the airline. And you know what? If someone's paying for status to get it back right now, the logic in their head is like this. You know what? I paid $1,000 to get my status back. When I can fly again, I'm going to get my money worth and fly that airline. So you're actually locking them in. You're actually locking them in. It's actually really smart. And so, you know, in any given airline, any year, you've got a percentage, double-digit percentage of people that are being downgraded, right? These people have money. They know what status feels like. They know what priority boarding and seating and lounges are like. They're used to that experience. They hopefully like that experience. Offer them something. Get creative. You know, I think I'm a big believer that airlines need to stop thinking like airlines and start thinking like tech companies. You know, tech companies, the valuations of these tech companies are off the charts, right? Whereas an airline is valued at what? 5 times P ratio kind of thing. And so if you can act like a digital company, suddenly you can increase the value of the organization. So loyalty should really try and look at what new products they can create right now, because now's the time to innovate. Well, actually, yesterday was the best time. Now's the second best time. So start doing it now. Try something new. Be bold. Like from a loyalty perspective, you really can't screw it up right now if you launch something new. Think about it. No one's playing anyway.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm hearing right now, you know, from loyalty managers, you know, I mean, and Mark, I know you're hearing this all the time as well. You know, for starters, loyalty teams in all programs around the world, half of them are sitting at home, half of them have been laid off or furloughed. You know, I mean, they really are running on lean skeleton staff right now. But the other thing is all these airlines and hotels, you know, I mean, they're cash strapped. And from the CFO's point of view, the loyalty program expense lines are not immune. Are not immune to the cost cutting and the cash outflow restrictions. Should now be the time that airlines and hotels are being tight on promotions, you know, whether it be using whichever currency levers they can, points, elite status, partner offers. Is now the time to be tight with that because cash is tight? Or is now the time to be saying, you know what, that's the area to be spending in, especially because we don't always incur a cost immediately today with that, but we need to be, generosity has to be, you know, the big, bold word, you know, hanging from the ceiling in the office. Thoughts on that? Mark, we'll start with you then to Brian.
I will leave with a few sentences here. Maybe leave miles aside because there is a real cost implicated down the line. Look at something else. Yep. There is a million other things, maybe not a million, but there's a lot of other things the loyalty program can do. You've got multiple currencies, not just miles and points. You've got other things as well. Create a third currency. Be bold. Do something new. Sell something else. But you got to think like your Facebook. What would Facebook do besides put more ads up there?
Brian?
I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just be different. Be bold. Be innovative right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just not expecting to see much from these loyalty programs. I mean, maybe I shouldn't talk like this, but like, let's take a step back and see what's happening, right? They built these businesses. The businesses are cratering before their eyes. Their stock prices is down. A lot of people are paid in stock. their colleagues are about to be laid off, if they have been laid off already. They're taking unpaid days, a lot of airlines, 1 day a week. They don't know when things are going to recover. A lot of people are working from home, so they don't even have that experience of like going in there and cross-pollinating with the people that they work with. And so I'm not surprised that a lot of airlines have just taken the just like let it run on autopilot move. Haven't been following it that closely, but I think we all know that Air Canada is building a loyalty program from scratch. It seems like every week I do get some innovative opportunities or offers from them. I confess to not reading it because it's early in the morning here, but there was a press release that I saw about some sort of a tie-up between Uber Eats and Air Canada's Aeroplan, and it made it very clear just in the title of the press release that it was for the USA as well as Canada. So at least they're trying, but not much else we're seeing.
Final thoughts as we wrap up, gents. Again, just airline loyalty buzz or hotel loyalty buzz right now. Anything we kind of haven't covered? Final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I'm going to go back to the card program because one thing that I'm following closely is, of course, I work at Skift. We're kind of a regular, trade publication, and we make money as you would think we would, but we compete sometimes like with the points guy. And the things that they've been able to do for the loyalty programs and the card programs over the last 5 years have just been amazing. And they've made so much money putting multiple credit cards in the hands of people with this idea that if you use the right credit cards and gain the right points, you can go around the world for free in business and first class. I am fascinated to see what that business is going to look like going forward. I mean, even if there will be a recovery, but was this points guy thing kind of a flash in the pan from 2013 to 2020? Or when 2022 comes around and people want to travel again, are they going to run back to those premium credit cards?
That's a good call. It's going to be, I think, an interesting case of watch this space, and I think we're seeing, day-to-day market-wise around the world, we're seeing the payment space being highly competitive because obviously people are stuck at home. Their spending habits are changed as we move into a recessionary environment. Spending habits change as well. Mark, final thoughts?
Yep, get creative. Think of something new, do something different, be bold. And if you are stuck at home and you're struggling for creativity, there's a lot of consultants out there. I don't know any of them that are charging right now. It's all free, including myself. So, for small projects, so that is. So, pick up the phone. Caveat: pick up the phone, send me a message. Happy to help out. That's what we do. We're here to support each other as an industry, because if the industry doesn't survive, all three of us here won't have jobs in this industry. So we're always here to help. I'm always here to help. Try something new.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Brian, for joining. Again, everybody, please keep an eye on the loyaltysummit.com and also our YouTube page. We'll have the replay up probably in the next day or so on that. Stay tuned as well for a registration for next week. We've got some exciting webcasts coming up over the next few weeks for you, and we will be announcing very soon the return of the physical Loyalty Summit events, which hopefully everybody can join us at. So again, loyaltysummit.com. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to our guests. And bye for now.